G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff Ukraine War Update for the 11th of April 2026. The Easter truce has begun. However, a strange thing has occurred. Ukraine has fired, Zelensky has fired an experienced commander. I'm going to jump to that story first. I was going to do the map, but no. Let's move this up. A second corps commander is believed to be removed on Zelensky's orders after the loss of Svetsk. Now, they finally admit that the loss of Svetsk was rapid. Though this is one of the few winter offensives where the Russians made rapid gains. He's not the only one. They fired, but he's the second one I can find for Svetsk. Now, he's the only one currently named, but it's believed there are others on the chopping block over Hulapol and the fall of Hinishki, although Hinishki isn't official yet, and the Ukrainians are on the outskirts of the city, but they're on the other side of the river trying to hold the bridge, and it's only holding because of the Easter truce. Serhii Shiniresko is an experienced commander of the 11th Army Corps. He's been in his job almost 500 days at his post. Was not on the rear, not on the paper, on the line of contact. And he faced intense combat actions. He's been forced to humiliate himself in public. So as not a perfect commander, there's no perfect commanders in war. And I made mistakes, I stayed silent, but he never stood behind you. This is, whether you like Ukraine or not, right? And if I would say this is a Russian commander or any other commander, there are very few genuine badasses in this world who lead men into action, who stand by their actions. He was defeated in battle. Now, Zelensky, instead of honorably accepting defeat, has decided to take out his frustrations on a man who lost because of weather conditions. Now, he didn't lose because he was a bad commander. He got literally snow blinded, as did most of the Ukrainians. They were standing on a foggy day, and the Russians had figured out and trained for stealth infiltrations and sent in their best. He lost to the best. And of course, even the best lose battles, as shown by the battlefield every day not being... See, if this was Russia on a good day, able to take a town within 24 hours without weather, without the Ukrainians worn down by 100 days of shelling, then yes, he would be incompetent. But he's not incompetent. Zelensky is taking out his anger and frustrations on this man who, whether you like Ukraine or support Ukraine or not, doesn't matter. He's a patriot who did his job, a genuine badass who deserves to be treated with respect. Firing experienced staff is not a good thing. It's a failure of leadership. It reflects inadequate training, inadequate preparation, and inadequate mentoring. There is no... this will damage the health of the army. He's a top performer. Firing a top performer creates a culture of fear that you can be next. So instead of taking bold action or risks or exploiting a perceived weakness in the enemy, of which we have seen gaps in the Russian front line recently, not exploited, where Russia also, with the same thing over the firing of a general, although that general was corrupt, it still sent shockwaves through the Russian army. Unfortunately, corruption in Russia is still a problem. But in Ukraine, this man wasn't corrupt. He wasn't engaged in the usual toxic actions we've seen of some of the other Ukrainians, like sending hand grenades disguised as vodka bottles in the post, or leaving a grenade on their table for their 13-year-old son to pull the pin and ask if it's live. No. He was blindsided with termination because the government took a high performer, gave him unrealistic expectations, and failed to take care of adequate equipment and to deal with situations like, and every Ukrainian should know there are foggy days where the visibility is almost zero. And they all experienced before with the fall of Bakhmut and others, the Russians able to crawl belly over a vast distance using all the cover they can of the weather. But this is even worse because the Russians rushed in on small vehicles, which they hadn't previously seen, small electric vehicles. And see, the Ukrainians thought they were buzzing drones of their own. And they were buzzing drones. They were Russian drones. So it's he was failed by his organization, and as punishment, they take it out on him. Now, before firing anybody, you should always look inward and examine the failure and put the failure on public display so that you know whether or not this man failed, and he did not. He tried to defend Zelensky, and he wasn't the only one. There are many situations through this winter campaign, well, 3, where Russia was able to advance because of weather rather than tactics, although it is a tactic to use weather. Whether you're not, this is not about Russia or Ukraine. This is about this man who did his job bravely and to the best of his ability. And he had to, after 500 days in the role of commander, he had to thank his subordinates for their cooperation and step down. Yeah, this is political. And this is a toxic blow which could cost Ukraine the war. I doubt it. I think Europe will rush in. I think that's the problem. Right? Europe is preparing to rush in, and that's the biggest fear right now, is France having openly stated they want an open war with Russia by 2027. This is just as bad as Xi announcing a hostile takeover of Taiwan, a reunification of an island that's outside the continent, the normal, yeah. Any other situation, the breakup of many countries, well, not that many, but in every breakup we've always seen the West supposedly support the rebels and the breakup of nations. Yet, when it comes to Ukraine, no, they want to hold it together. When it comes to defending their own borders, they pissed in a cup and call it a day. But Ukraine, no. They throw more resources at Ukraine than they do their own protection. Call me alive if you want, but marching bands and aging jets are not protection. And as for France, they sell their best equipment to everyone else. They don't have the best equipment for themselves. In fact, the British Army is under-equipped, routinely so. Now, as we look at the map, before the ceasefire took effect, there was a lot of activity, a lot of drone strikes on both sides, a lot of bombs dropped. Some of them are old markers. We have to be careful of that. But going through, most of the front began to, around midday, started to go quiet. And, yeah, both sides launched drones, but across the front, remember, this is news for the 10th as well. A lot of it is leftovers from the 10th. Most of the front went quiet within a few hours of the announcement, and it's been slowly, Royal Ukraine says, yeah, Russia does drones too. Yeah, but that was in response to Ukraine firing drones despite accepting a ceasefire. So both sides got a low blow in. Now, in the last week, we heard from Russia announcing a new increasing its tactical table of equipment. Yeah, table of equipment. Well, it's one of the new tables of equipment. One of the new items on the table of equipment is the Tor MU. This replaces the Tor M2. This is a update, one of many to the Tor system. Now, I thought it was going to be with the Terminator guns, but the new version of the 4 versions they had to put on display, they went with the large missile carrier. And you can see it takes up, these are the new, obviously new missiles, the new version of the missile that we saw yesterday. As you can see, they're using various chassis in various, they're using the variation of the MLT with various camouflage patterns. You got the Arctic in the middle, you got the summer, what they call the summer in the front, and in the rear you have what they call the winter. Now, this does not have the 4th Russian pattern on display, which you've all seen is the blue-grey, known as the digital pattern. That is predominantly used by the Russian air services, and it's also predominantly used in urban environments rather than these are headed for the testing fields. They often test the equipment in plain green, but they do test it out. As you know, it's a test model, and it was tested already in 2016, so quite the but you notice the guns are missing. Yeah, and it does actually, it's a housing unit. This is one of the variations, the command center. One of the variations of its camouflage pattern. Obviously, this is the Arctic camouflage pattern. You see in the background the green or the summer pattern, and you know it's the old pattern, 2016. It's the new pattern. A lot of the stuff still has the old patterns, by the way. A lot of Russian equipment had. It depends on troop familiarization and troop replacement. There's an interesting, as the missiles launched, it's stabilizing. Alright, so there's a smaller command vehicle. These are going to the front lines. These are, tubes. They're just stacked with tubes. And each tube is a missile. And there's you go. There's the launcher has the blast panels, which open up usually when they launch. But it has, as you can see, the armor panels. See its radar does not have the twin guns. Instead, it just has the missiles. It has different missiles, though. As you can see, under the armor, there is quite the rocketry and radar systems, as well as the side panels. There you go. Two cells packed in tight. That's why it does not have guns. No room. Has more. The Tor M2, as you've seen, only had the 2 packs. This has got what they call a cell. These are often used on ships. Yeah, tightly packed in there. And you can see the big tubes as well. So why they do that? Because they have the Terminator, right? Terminator, so they're specializing by the looks of it. Well, we'll see how that plays out, shall we? Whether or not Russian air defenses improve or not. Sometimes if you see no improvement, but you hear about Ukraine rolling out new drones, it means Russia's only matched them. It doesn't mean they've got... It means both sides have got better at the same time. I should clarify. So, there were missile strikes and drone strikes leading up on the night of the 10th and in the morning of the 11th. But there's been only small activity, but the truce... Yeah. 4 p.m. So by 2 hours ago, the last firing, last combat action had occurred 2 hours before deadline. And as far as we know, it should hold until the midnight of the 12th. But both sides will be armed to the teeth and getting ready to launch action the moment. There will be no whistle blowing. You'll just hear the first crackles of fire, and then it'll be game on. And we'll see what happens. But apparently the EU is willing to forgive Zelensky on anything as long as he continues his mission. The Russian top diplomat has pointed out that recently the Kiev regime has ignored both EU demands and its own constitution. Now, the EU has demanded changes to policy and corruption and other transparency in disbursement, reporting on how they spend this money that they have. Apparently, the EU is caught out that they're claiming they're unaware that Zelensky was pulling cash out of the banks, and even called Viktor Orban a liar, which is why he turned around and arrested publicly the Ukrainians with truckloads of cash, because nobody would believe him. And that's a serious political problem. If you run around with blinders on, and I'm not talking about accusations against Trump or, we see, was Tara Reid ever investigated? No, she was told by an FBI agent they were out to kill her. The establishment was out to kill her, and she thought this was a joke. She was on a book tour, and the next thing you know, her parents are calling saying that the house has been raided, looking for her. And I think they were trying to scare her into silence, and still to this day, you never know what is true or not. But obviously, Russian intelligence took it as true. Now, Russia's very wary of Americans trying to seek asylum in Russia, who only turn around to try and discredit Russia and expose them or whatever. We do know that it was declassified that there were many attempts to infiltrate Russia using refugees. So, why does it come as a surprise to Americans that refugees are not genuine when they used use that as a means to infiltrate Russia. It's why you can't take politicians seriously. They lie. And so, do you take Russia seriously? Well, I think there are times you have to weigh whether or not to take them seriously. I think this is what they genuinely believe, that Zelensky has an open license. Apparently there's leaked phone conversations. So there's more than one. Or is it unleaked phone conversation? But there are allegedly leaked phone conversations that were das Spiel about the threats of violence against Viktor Orban, and apparently also the EU trying to call around to find someone with dirt on Orban. Orban realizes that it might not be today, it might not tomorrow, it might be a few years from now. But if you continue to demean, degrade, to try and humiliate Russians, you'll create hardliners. And those hardliners eventually one day will be sitting on the button of the nuclear trigger, maybe not Putin's successor, but there will eventually be a war, a catastrophic war, because the Europeans themselves are hardliners who want war. Unless there's serious de-escalation, because you can't just move Russia away. That's the problem, right? You've got to get along with your neighbors. This is about good neighbors. Unfortunately, Americans seem to think good neighbors means come in and take over our land, Mexico. But yeah, his mission, you all know what his mission is, to buy time, to genuinely commit the European people to a path of fear, panic, and eventually be so overwhelmed with emotion that they will go to war, even though a war like World War II was neither won nor lost. It was ended, and it was, I mean, you look at it politically. Japan achieved most of its goals. No, I'm not talking about Germany. I'm talking about Japan. Japan achieved most of its goals, stated goals, to end colonialism in Asia, to rebalance power, to kick the West out. So in many parts, now I think there were many mistakes made leading up to World War II, which many people have pointed out, that could have not prevented war. But there were many, and I don't mean Churchill. Churchill was always just warning there was going to be war, but he wasn't as active at it, unlike others who were taking actions. So remember, Churchill was only opposition when the British government was blundering around Europe, turning a blind eye to France, who was provoking Germany at every opportunity and trying to keep the German economy down by constantly devaluing its currency. $1,000,000 is $1,000,000, but they wanted it in gold, so that's currency manipulation right there. So Ukraine's mobilization crisis. There are many articles on this. A military channel has allegedly came out and says an MP from Zelensky said the People Party believes that Ukraine's on the verge of collapse. This is not new. Some believe he's fear-mongering. Some believe he's right. There was only 30,000 out of 50,000 recruitment target. They needed 50,000 to replace battlefield losses, and they only managed 30,000. Next quarter, what will happen if they have less? Well, this is going forth. We're entering a new quarter now. We're 11 days in. So let's see, can they meet their match? Now, allegedly, according to this, there are over 200 official desertions. 200,000, as I said. The other day it said 500,000, I know, and I couldn't find anything to back it up. Well, that was probably a misprint, and it was 200,000 because everyone else Even CNN said that they believed. Now, that does sound a little bit like a weasel word, but they believed the parliamentarian who was telling them that around 200,000 fail to report to duty regularly, officially listed as deserters, most of whom are either dead or outside Ukraine. Now, what I mean by if they're dead, why aren't they unlisted? Well, nobody can find them, so whether or not they're dead is yet to be determined. But over 2 million Ukrainians are wanted for recruitment. Failure to report routinely. There's no official forced conscription or draft. That's why these men have been able to skirt the authorities. Plus, large swaths of the countryside do not support the war and tear up draft notices and won't deliver them. Routinely, somehow the Kharkiv post office is routinely hit by Russia. Why? That's the draft notices. Russia is literally... That's why Russia's blowing up post offices, so the draft notices don't go out. I bet you there's some Ukrainians out there on Russian Telegram putting up the coordinates of the post office. Hey, the post office moved 2 blocks down, and all of a sudden, boom, Russia suddenly knows where it is. I bet you there's... Now, I'm not saying they're giving away military targets. I'm just saying the post office. Please hit the post office between these hours at this location. Yeah. Now, we all seen the anti-drone protection. Now, this